Hello everybody, it's Eric Pappenfuss. It's Friday, so it must be a bye day. Fall is upon us, and we are 1 week away from the Harrisburg Book Festival and the new opening of our collectibles room. Now this past week, we went down to Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania, and we visited a gentleman who is a film professor. And let me show you what we got. We got hundreds and hundreds of scholarly books on film, including, some really nice old classics. And we'll be processing these over the next couple of weeks and putting them in our new film study section in the bookstore. But the most interesting thing that we found were all of these film posters that the gentleman had collected over the years. Let me show you a few of them. Here's an old Hitchcock poster, The 39 Steps. Isn't that awesome? And here, Spike Lee in Japanese. Gotta have Spike Lee in Japanese. And an original Marlon Brando. That's pretty awesome too. So we're going to be putting these posters up as decoration in the back of the main bookstore on the art floor, in the very back, in what we call the popular culture room. We're going to decorate it with all these great posters. So come on in and check them out, and check out our new works in film studies. We're going to try and have them all up for the book festival in 1 week's time. But let's get right to our exciting box of finds this week. And this week, we're going to talk about artists' books. Not artists' books in the sense of books designed by artists, but artists' books in the sense of books that were at one point in time owned by famous American artists. And I found this little book here, Amanda, at Willis Money's bookstore in Cooperstown, New York, just a couple weeks ago. And I've been processing those books and just discovered what it had inside very recently. Now, this is a copy of Joshua Reynolds' Discourses on Art. And Joshua Reynolds was the great British painter, portrait painter, and 18th century star of the painting world. What's interesting about this little book is it's pocket size, and it's an American edition from 1821. I'd never seen an American printing from that period in time, and that's what caused me to buy it. It's a very interesting thing. Now, when I got it home, I was erasing the price and the catalog number when I saw very faintly in pencil who it was owned by. Now, I think if you come in really closely and you look, you can see beneath the $10 price tag the name Thomas Cole, 1824. And yes, that is the Thomas Cole, who is the founder of the Hudson River School in American art history, and perhaps the preeminent landscape artist of the 19th century. The signature matches, and they had just written right over it with the price tag. Now, I thought to myself, who would own a book of Joshua Reynolds in the 1820s in America? And it would be exactly that type of person. Thomas Cole, he would have been a young, early 20-something artist, probably bought it in New York or Philadelphia, and you can imagine him putting this in his pocket and taking it with him to the Catskills and painting some of those amazing landscapes that you've seen. Now, who is Jothru Reynolds, and why is it important to Thomas Cole? Here's a copy of the modern scholarly Yale University Press edition. But the importance of the Discourses on Art was what it had to say about history painting. And basically, Reynolds was very, very critical of any type of painting which was too literal. I'm going to read you a little bit. He says, "The great end of art is to strike the imagination." And then it says, "It's not enough in invention that the artist should restrain and keep under all the inferior parts of his subjects. He must sometimes deviate from vulgar and strict historical truth in pursuing the grandeur of his design." And Reynolds goes on, and he basically considers landscape and portrait painting to be a lesser form of art than history painting. And history painting is less exact, and it's more about emotion and what is being conveyed in the artwork. And what's fascinating about Cole is he takes Reynolds' advice to heart, and he paints a series of historical landscape paintings, including a whole series on the rise and fall of empire, which you can see today at the New York Historical Society. You can see all of them in one room. And it talks about the cyclical nature of history, but it basically interprets the landscape into something which is grander and tells a larger historical tale. So it's landscape painting as history painting, inspired by Joshua Reynolds, probably inspired by reading this very book. And Cole's probably the most famous American artist of the mid-19th century, which is really, really interesting. So there's a fascinating book. Now, the other book I have to show you is a book that we've had for a little while, but it was, it seemed like a good time to bring it out because of the way it relates to to the larger question of books owned by artists. Now, it's 2 volumes, and the signature that we're looking at is in the front of this volume, which is volume 1, and I'm going to get it out for you. All right, now what this is an edition of Homer that was owned by Rembrandt Peale and is being given to him given by Rembrandt Peale, the artist, to John Lafarge, the artist. And it is actually a burlesque translation of Homer. Are you familiar with what a burlesque translation of Homer is, Amanda? Well, it is a somewhat bawdy 18th century style of telling a story. Come now, Miss Muse, but if a maid, then come, Miss Muse, and let me aid. And it talks in the preface, good people, would you know the reasons I write at this unlucky season when all the nation is so poor that few can keep above 1 whore, except the lawyers whose large fees maintain as many as they please. Well, that's the book, all right? And this was published in New York in 1809. And the only time that Rembrandt Peale and Lafarge are together in New York would have been the late 1850s. So this book would have been 50 years old when Rembrandt Peale gave it to Lafarge. Now, if you don't know Rembrandt Peale is most famous for his rather stoic paintings of George Washington. George Washington in an oval. That's Rembrandt Peale. He's the son of Charles Wilson Peale. If you don't know Lafarge, Lafarge is most famous for his stained glass work. He was a contemporary of Louis Comfort Tiffany's, and he did stained glass, and he's most famous for his beautiful religious Art Nouveau inspired. Neither of these, you would think, would read a burlesque take on Homer. It's almost like Rembrandt Peale went out into a used bookstore at the time, found this, and gave it to Lafarge as a gift. So why would he do it? I told you for the Joshua Reynolds book, I realized right away, well, this is exactly the type of book that Thomas Cole would want. But this book is not the type of book that Rembrandt Peale would give to John Lafarge. But I have a theory, and I believe the theory, Amanda, is that they were commenting not on Homer from ancient times, but rather it's an inside joke about Winslow Homer, their friend Winslow Homer, who was also an artist in New York at the time. And in the late 1850s, Winslow Homer had just done an engraving of Rembrandt Peale. He was very close friends with Lafarge, and I think it is referring to Homer. Homer, and especially sexuality in Homer's paintings, is a relatively new theme. If you go see some of his great works like The Undertow or some of these others, you'll see these maidens being rescued by burly men, and you can see this at the Philadelphia Museum of Art and elsewhere. But I think that's what they're getting at, an inside joke between the two with their friend Homer. I just want to say one more thing about Lafarge. Lafarge is so interesting because he ends up training all of our female book designers that we're featuring in the new collectibles room. Sarah Whitman is trained by Lafarge. So is Alice Morse. And here's an example of a book by Alice Morse that we have in the new collectible room. And I think you can see that the design is very much influenced by stained glass. But that's Lafarge's great contribution. He also worked with Margaret Armstrong and others. All right, we're going to end with a funny book, Amanda. It's almost Halloween, and I wanted to bring out this book because I know you're probably thinking about designing your costume. So we have epic cosplay costumes for Halloween. The only problem is these costumes are not epic. And they are really the saddest costumes I've ever seen. And I think you'd be laughed out loud if you went and actually wore one of those costumes. I think that's all we have to say, right, Amanda, is about the lack of the epic nature. But you can still make them at home. I hope everybody's getting ready for an exciting Halloween season. We may have some surprise Halloween books next week as well. But remember, next week, Harrisburg Book Festival, opening of the new collectibles room. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching. I'm Eric, and see you next time.